Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, because for us French, first translation, it's not the evening, it's yet the afternoon. The evening starts when you drink something, and since we are not yet drinking, it's still the evening. First of all, a very, very, very helpful thanks to two beautiful, incredible ladies, Namita, that I don't need to introduce, and of course, Nita. Thank you for making that possible. It was a dream, thanks to you, it's becoming a reality. In the middle of the 1920s, a British translator was starting to become extremely worried. Having undertaken to translate one of the most beautiful French poems written around that stage, he was desperate to get an answer from the French author, who at that time was the chief of staff, of the French foreign minister. And you can imagine that by the mid-20s, that man was quite busy. Finally, by 1927, the French author sent a beautiful letter that all of us should read and read again, explaining very precisely why Les Détroits Fautifs should be translated by faulty straits and not any other ways. And of course, the letter goes on and goes on about each line of the poem. Those two men actually became very good friends. The British translator was so overwhelmed by this friendship that he actually made two other translations of the same poem, one in the 40s and one in the 50s. The French author was awarded by the Nobel Prize of Literature in 1960. The British translator, who is also a famous British poet, got the Nobel Prize in 1948. You already, of course, have understood who I'm speaking about, Saint-Georges Perse in the French side and T.S. Eliot on the British side. Why do I tell you this story? It's because these two future Nobel Prizes spend so much time discussing, writing, sending letters, debating about how exactly to translate any words, is that because we should follow their steps and we should honor translators. And that's exactly what we're doing today. As you may have noticed, we are in the middle of that little thing which is called BonJour India, which is the third edition of it, which is 302 events in 33 cities. And we are extremely proud, dear Namita, that this year, where Jaipur Lit Fest and BonJour India join hands, we have an extremely impressive French delegation coming. So I would like to thank all our French colleagues, or even better, our Indian friends who are so French now that they sit with us on the French side. Donovat, dear Chinmoy. BonJour India is more above everything. BonJour India is to tell India that France wants to share with India. Shares its ideas, its capacity to innovate, its capacity to create, its ideas, and of course, its words. And as you all know, we couldn't do that if those extremely important people were not doing the job they are doing. They read, and as Leila was saying in a previous session, there is no good writer without a good reader. They think and they write, but they don't write for themselves. They have a name, of course, on the book, but you know it's always page 3, page 4, page 5, depending on the way the editor is doing his job or her job. They are in the shadows, but they are extremely important. They are the one who allow us to read a book from Brazil, from Japan, from France, from Assam, from Kerala, from wherever the books come. Without you, we won't be readers. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Daniewat, Yumnogare, Nani, Nandri, Spasiba Bolshoi, and so forth. Correct the thank you, they are very useful. So let me officially, in front of all of you, thank the 5 members of the jury, by not order at all, Professor Annie Montaut, who sits in the middle. Namita, of course, so it's a double thank already. Michèle ALbaret-Maatsch, who sits next to Namita. Renuka George, who sits next to Professor Montaut. And sorry, Chinmoy, but you know that in France it's always les dames d'abord. Chinmoy Guha, who came specifically from Kolkata to be here today. And let me also thank two people who actually were not members of the jury, but experts to help those five incredibly arguing, debating people. Mrs. Narayani Harigovindan, who helped us a lot with the Malayalam language. Nani. And Zirunja Viragavan, who is not here, but who used to be working with us for Tamil. The reason why we wanted that prize was to, first of all, say, wow, great job. And second of all, was to invite all publishers not to be afraid to publish French books in whatever Indian language. You have an incredible amount of languages, and we are always very fascinated by that. So we think that sometimes India, for many, many, many reasons, is still thinking that the West is UK/US. We know that there is not one East, and that we shouldn't think that Japan and India are the same country. So maybe it's also time, but that's up to us to do it, to think that, you know, UK, Spain, Germany, France, Poland, blah, 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 they're not exactly the same countries, and they do not think exactly the same way. So we want much more partnership, much more contracts. We want all the agents to be happy and be exceedingly rich. One day that might come. We want all the publishers to have piles of books disappearing in one day because everybody is so keen to buy them. And of course, we want translators to live happily forever with or without children. That's not my problem. And we also would like to convey a thought that, and this is why in BonJour India we created a section called The Other Thought, that let's engage, let's debate. India and France do share much more than we know. What about the augmented human? What about environment? What about climate change? What about the fight for cultural diversities? What about science and society and ethics and so forth? We are actually very, very often on the same line, but we don't know that. I know that, mujhe maloom hai, because I'm living in India for some time now, but many, many people don't know, although some of you here have been already fighting for that. I'm not going to mention any name, but some publisher sitting in Kolkata, for instance, knows exactly what I'm talking about. Just an example, but there are many, many, many more. So, today we are also extremely happy that we have amongst us someone who is a great, great writer. 1 million copies, said the moderator in the last session. But precisely now and here, Leila Slimani is not here as a writer, but as a French president, special envoy for the French language. And I will be extremely happy in a few seconds to call her on stage. But before that, because she will award the prize, let me tell you that thanks to the generosity of a lady who actually comes to Jaipur very often, Pretty Paul, a great book lover, a great fighter for books. The winners of that very first edition of the Romain Rolland Prize will be invited to Paris next book fair, or salon as we'll call it. It's a bit too early for me to announce a very joyful perspective. It's not yet completely official on the Indian side, but let me tell you that France will be welcome many, many Indian authors and publishers in the following years. So without further ado, as Shakespeare, who was not yet French, but who knows, nobody knows who he was, so maybe he was French, I will be extremely happy to invite Leila Slimani on stage and for her to give the award. And I, unfortunately, will have to say bye-bye because I have to rush back to Delhi. Leila.
So you have to excuse me if I mispronounce Indian names, I'm very sorry, but I do it with all my heart, so I think it's okay. So the award goes to Megun Shuda, was translated in Hindi. It's a translation from Rue des Boutiques Obscures by Patrick Modiano, published by Rajpal and Sons, and the translator Monica Singh. Congratulations to you. Here are the certificates. This is for you, and this is for congratulations.
Thank you so much. I was just telling Pranav that Patrick Modiano won his first very big prize in France. It is called Prix Goncourt. Et c'était en 1978. It was in 1978. And 40 years from then, today, his book wins in another language. So I have been fascinated by his writing. I was overwhelmed. I just couldn't get out of the novel when I translated the work. And thanks to Meeraji, Pranav, everybody, they supported so much, and they gave me a free hand, never pressured me, never gave me deadlines that you have to submit then and then. If I ask for more time, they would say, take your time, but please submit a good work. Thank you so much.
So it's great to get an award for a translation, because I've always felt that translation is what helps literature travel. There's such fantastic writing that happens in every language, every country of the world, and we don't come to know about it if it doesn't get translated. I'd like to specially mention the translator for this book, and in fact she's the translator for a lot of following Modiano books as well, because we went through a long selection process where we tried to find a translator who could do justice to the works of Modiano, and finally Monica Singh was selected, and she's done a fantastic job. This award is an affirmation of the fantastic job you did, and I hope to have more of your Modiano books published this year and continue. And I'd like to thank everyone for recognizing the work that's gone into it.
Thank you, Pranav. I'd like to ask Nicolas to now join us on stage. I think we'll have a small conversation. We can just, I think it'll be nice to have Leila join us on stage. Can you just put another chair up, please? There's somebody somewhere.
So congratulations a lot to, in fact, first congratulations a lot to every publisher who has their publishing books translated from French. You know, in a way, it should have been everyone should deserve this award, because I think to publish a translation is never easy. It's a question of challenge, a question of choice. It's a question of budget also. And I must say that I'm always impressed. You know, since 4 years I'm here, I'm always impressed by the quality of the choice of Indian publishers. And in this sense, Namita will give a special mention to another book, which is not the award, because I think, and then we can discuss about the difficulty also to make a choice, because the diversity, the plurality of Indian languages, including English. So it was very difficult, but because the members of the jury were really struggling to find a choice, at the end we decided to create a special mention. So Namita, please can you announce us the special mention?
Well, the person who did the special mention is sitting right there in the last row.
So the special mention of the Prix Romain Rolland, the book award Romain Rolland for translation and publishing, is going to Sam Miller, who has translated Once Upon a Time in India by Alfred Asselan, a book published from French to English by Juggernauts. So please take your applause to Sam Miller.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for this. I'm particularly pleased to be here today for a very specific reason. I first read Leila Slimani's Dans le Jardin de l'Aube not long after it came out, and soon after I finished Corcoran. I thought I'd love to translate that book. But I then looked at it and looked at that first sentence, which I think was une semaine quelqu'un, and I couldn't get it right in English, and I thought no more of it. So you might have got a letter, but you didn't, unfortunately. I should have stayed with it. But I think that makes it particularly special for me. This was my first attempt at translation. I loved it. Thank you.
So, on behalf of the Jaipur BookMark and the Jaipur Literature Festival, whom Sam has always supported, a very, very big thank you for being here in so many different capacities. Sometimes a moderator, sometimes a translator. Today he moderated a rather multilingual session, and
but no French.
You get that? It is here. So I hand it back to you now. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Namita. So perhaps I would like to give the floor to Annie Montaut, because Annie Montaut, since very few years, you've been struggling a lot as a teacher, a professor, a specialist of Hindi language, and you yourself is a translator. So can you tell us a little bit about the creation of this prize, the way you've been working, and your appreciation, and what perhaps, let's open the debate also between the jury members. I think we all would like to listen a little bit more about you.
Okay, I might agree to start with the discussion only because I am the oldest, not because...
Not at all.
What is that? So, well, I was approached by Nita, in fact, Nita, who told me about this prize, Romain Rolland, and I was not particularly enthusiastic. What kind of thing is that? And then she insisted a bit, and then I agreed, and then the machine started to work well. When I received the manuscript, I had probably the same reaction as all my co-evaluators, that how are we going to make a common decision, to reach consensus with each of us, just a few translations to evaluate, which is totally understandable. At least those who had English could circulate between themselves, and all of the jury could read at least the translation and have an opinion. But what for the other languages? Because, of course, among us, maybe some know two of them, of the so-called regional or vernacular, or let us say better, Indian languages outside English, which is on its right, and Indian languages, but we have to choose some word to design the label, the other languages. So for me, that was the initial problem. I am going to just two works. Shall I be extremely severe? And the other guy, working with the Malayalam or Tamil will be extremely generous, then of course it is not equitable. And the same for all other languages. Then I started, we were not communicating at this time with nobody, so I kept my anxiety for myself, and I decided to make a pretty non-generous statement. I mean, every small and big mistake, for one of the works I had to evaluate, I did not make a complete collection because I would have to, I think, taken 400 of pages. But I said, well, let us wait for what the others have done. And it is still a problem, I may say. I may not be very politically very correct, but having such condition of evaluation is not entirely satisfying. Of course, we could not do better. And maybe it is not possible even in the future to do far better. But there is something there, a jury giving a prize is not an examination for one person, and no member of the evaluating staff will have a global knowledge of all the results. That's a problem for me, and maybe it's a structural problem, but should not go against the prize, which is a very good. Now, do I have 1 minute to tell about what? For me, also one of my presupposé, my bias about the prize was that it was designed to support Indian translation. I just fancied that, nobody told me. But I said, well, great occasion to get this discipline a bit more professionalized, because everybody heard of complaints that translation can be very good and very extremely bad, there is no standard. So, good occasion to at least to show that professionalizing means something, and support both the translators and the publishers who accept to publish translations in very difficult conditions. So that was my main incentive going on board in this, in so many ways, crazy adventures. Now, second problem is most tricky. And I must say that till now, I really feel slightly uncomfortable. I fully advocate my own choice, which was for the... In Hindi, there was no doubt at all which one was the best. When I read the reports of the colleagues on other languages, again, I did not hesitate, because I was rather severe, and mine were rather better, I mean, for the translator than for other languages. Now, there was the English, and I said how to compare two excellent translations. I have no doubt, I'm absolutely sure that the English was faultless. The book was interesting in its own right. We can say Modiano is more modern, but the other one is more universal. Children also can read it. Well, there are reasons on both sides, and for me, the quality of the work definitely deserved. So that was my embarrassment, and it is also a structural problem. Because perhaps Annie, because time is restricted, is any other members of the jury wants to react to that? Well, they first can answer the question.
Please, so perhaps Chinmoy or Michèle or Renuka?
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to be here with members of the jury who worked very hard, and the winners of the award, and the person who was mentioned specially, and to be here at Jaipur Festival with Namita. Which the festival, of course, is the finest festival of thoughts in India. This 3,287,032 square kilometers. Just imagine, with 1,652 languages, 33 of which are spoken by more than 100,000 people, and 24 official languages. This is the biggest language laboratory in the world. And so we are living in the midst of a semantic network, which is remarkable, which is dizzying, and therefore I think it's the right place where to begin to give a kind of national award for translations from very important foreign language, foreign literature into Indian languages. And therefore I think we congratulate, of course, Institut Français and Monsieur France, and of course the Jaipur Literary Festival. What is important is that another very important aspect should not be forgotten today, the Romain Rolland Award. The man who thought about India, who tried to understand our country, playwright, biographer, French novelist, author of Jean Christophe, translated to 40 languages, L'Âme Enchantée, thinker, someone who tried, the first biographer of Gandhiji, 1924, the biographer of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. Of course, he also wrote the biographies of Michelangelo and Handel and Millet and many, Tolstoy, of course, and many others. He was a friend of Tolstoy, he was a friend of Freud, he was a friend of, we all know, Maxim Gorky. Such a man, for the first time honored in this country, in such a manner, such a befitting manner, because he tried to comprehend our country. Therefore, I think it's a fantastic occasion to respect this man too. And another thing that is very important, if Bonjour India is an expression of love of France for India, this translation from French literature into Indian languages is also India's homage to France. See, this is very, very important. And we can't think of the world without translation. It's like living in a world without windows. Translation and windows are synonymous. And it's true that in India, we must accept this, we have not done sufficient number of translations. It's a failure. When Sahitya Academy began to translate, it was created for the first time, it said Indian literature is one. But I don't think the languages of the regions could interconnect in the way it should have. So I think we have been working for it, and it's a great, great moment. And translation, as we know, is a humbling business. Each time, as Mr. Rolland said just now, for the first line creates problems.
Sam Miller is Mr. Asolo. Thank you very much, Chinmoy. It's very important in books. Namita wanted to add something.
No, before I was a member of the jury, but as a member of the jury, I think the task entrusted to me was to make sure that this prize got visibility and a good grounding in the Jaipur BookMark and the Jaipur Literature Festival. So I just wanted to say that on behalf of this Jaipur Literature Festival and the Jaipur BookMark, that both of us, all of us, the distinguished translators in the audience, we believe passionately in translation and supporting translation, and this very paradoxically architectured prize, trying to give parity to so many languages, will give us a way to study this further. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to all of you for bringing this prize here, and hoping that it will come here again and again and again, and we will discuss previous winners, future winners, methods, methodologies, and we will always have the beautiful Leila.
But it's been a marvelous step forward. That's true.
Michèle, please tell us a little bit more about your views and how you've worked and what you're expecting from this very, very beautiful book prize.
Well, my friends around said quite a number of things already. And true, the diversity of India, I mean, linguistically, is a wonder and a hassle. My Hindi is very broken. I'm totally illiterate, so I can communicate very well with Riksha Valam, but other than that, it's not that good. So I couldn't judge your translation, but do know that I'm really pleased that you gave a very good job to many Hindi readers. I trust Annie's view, but you would understand that I was absolutely enthralled by Sam's translation, because I can read English, that's the way it is, even though English is not my language. And again, we have that formidable question about India. Remember, I mean, something like many, many years ago, English was the link language. And in many parts of India it remains, even though, I mean, we do feel proud about people, I mean, about communicating in Hindi. But we must underline the beautiful, beautiful translation that Sam gave us. And if you haven't read his book, of course, Modiano, I mean, is a household name. I love Modiano. But Capitaine Corcoran, read it for yourself. It's an extraordinary gross humor. No, it's not possible. He did it? Yes, he did it. He did it. And you can read it yourself as an adult, but don't hesitate to give it to children. And we are in Jaipur. You have an institution in Jaipur who happens to be Brigitte Singh, and Capitaine Corcoran was her cult book when she was a child. And she was very happy to know that now it's in English. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say, except I would like to add one thing. I acknowledge the fact, and I encourage the fact that we reward translators. I love it when I'm rewarded as well. But because we are in India, and because we want French to get, I mean, French culture, please, to be known better. Please, dear publishers, go ahead, go for it. Give us more work translated from French. We would be most happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Michèle. It's very, very encouraging. Renuka, I think we have decided to create together this award also to encourage publishers and to create a status of the translator. So can you tell us a little bit more about how a translator is working, especially here in India, and what we should improve?
Okay, I'm a translator myself. I translate from French to English, and I think that working as a translator in India is really, really difficult. It's not a profession that's recognized as a profession. People seem to forget that translators eat every day of the week, and they need to be able to earn their living. If you want good translators, they need to be able to live from their profession. Otherwise, they don't have time to dedicate themselves to this profession. It can only be a hobby. And I don't think you get good translators that way. I think we need ways of encouraging translators to truly dedicate themselves to studying a language, to working on translating. So we hope the publishers will find a way forwards with that, and that the profession will be increasingly recognized in this country and into all languages. Because again, I think as translators, probably English is the best paid at the moment, but one would like to see all the Indian languages paid sufficiently for translators to become translators and to live off their work. And I think that will be a huge step forwards for translation and publishing. And I'd just like to say thanks a lot to the Institut Français, because I learned a lot as a translator by being on this jury, just looking at books and evaluating them, evaluating the translation. It's not an easy task, and I think as a translator it's even more difficult because you also know that translating is so difficult. So judging someone else's translation is also difficult. And working with so many languages was also difficult. What I would say though, I think a book that's really well translated, you don't even think about it. You just read it. And you just know that you just read it as a book. It's no longer a translation, and it touches you. And that's, for me, true of Samila's work. It was an amazing, I started reading it and I started thinking about it, and then I stopped thinking about it, I just read it, you know. And you just got to the end. And it was amazing because it's a book written in an old-fashioned language, but it's just so smoothly translated. And I did, after I finished reading it, I then went back to the French and I was thinking, how did you do that? And so I thought that was really, really interesting. So that was great. And I think we were lucky because all the reports written by the members of the jury were really well written. So yes, it's true we couldn't judge the books ourselves. It was very difficult for us. But I think just by reading the reports you knew, and you also felt that somebody else had read a book. Andy's reaction to the Hindi book was sort of like our reaction to the English book. So you kind of said, okay, so it's the same kind of feeling even if you can't read the book. And he felt the same thing towards the Hindi. So we had to use everybody's reports, but I think it was, you know, we had our discussions and I think we trusted the other readers. And so it was sort of decided on that basis. So I'm really happy the Hindi got the prize, but I loved Sambila's translation.
A great prize and a great special mention. Chinmoy said something that the Jaipur Festival was a kind of laboratory of ideas, experimental of ideas. I would like to ask Leila. Leila, you're traveling a lot now. You, as a special envoy of the French president for French language, you want to develop something also about French language. And the experimental things is very important to you, you've told me. How do you work to bring also translators and publishers on board on this journey?
Nicolas, can I just add one point, a footnote before I move on? We move on. So yes, just one.
First of all, I would like to say that I have the luck to be translated in many languages, and I travel a lot to present my book, and I meet a lot of translators, my translators, and I must say that it is very important to value more the work of translator, because in Spain, in Romania, in Czech Republic, in Morocco, it is almost impossible to live as a translator. People I met are very dedicated to their work, and they work during nights after their work to translate books, and they do it with a lot of passion, with a lot of dedication, but they don't earn money. And I think it's really a shame that they can't live with this profession. It is a very, very important profession. And it's interesting that you made a metaphor about the window before, because in Morocco there is a very famous translator who said one day that knowing just one language is like living in a house with one window and always looking on the same direction. And I think actually that is very true. So as for French language, actually I want to promote and to defend French language, but with other language. I think that for many years we had the feelings that we have to defend French language against the other languages if we were attacked by other languages. But actually I think that in the world we are living in, with the globalization, we should speak as much languages as we can. We should speak English and French and Spanish. So defending and promoting French language is not something that you are doing against. It's something that you are doing in addition to other languages. So, you know, I think that in the world we're living, where a lot of people are telling us that we should build walls between us, that every civilization is different and that we can't share, that everyone should stay inside his own frontiers. It's very important to say that when you share a language, you can share a lot of things. You can laugh together, you can fall in love, you can do a lot of things. So it's in a certain way the proof that there is no such borders, and it's never impossible to communicate. We can always communicate if we want to translate and to learn other languages.
Thank you so much. Before giving the floor to the audience, because I think a lot of people would like to ask you questions, Chinmoy wanted to add something. So Chinmoy, the footnote.
Yeah, just a
footnote. The footnote usually is the best part of a book.
But I thought I should sort of use it, mention this as a footnote at least, that yes, of course, two members of the jury were not capable for reading it for some reason. Hindi, of course, it's possible. We can't know all the languages. That's why I teach English, of course, for many years. My academic works are in English. I continue to study in English. I speak 4 hours, 5 hours in English at university. I write in Bengali. Amit would know perhaps I have some contribution in Bengali prose. And I speak French. So I read both the works many, many times, of course, apart from reading my Bengali translations, which this time were not at all up to expectations. But I read Hindi, not only Annie, but me too, and I'm sure it's Namita too. And I can assure you that the flavor, in French one say, on
on savoure, I tasted it, the Hindi translation of Monica Singh. It seemed that sort of I could smell it, the odor of the language. It's a transfigurating experience. It was a transmuting experience. Same with the English translation, but I think in Hindi, somehow it reaches the heart. More immediately, Modiano was because I'm a great admirer of Modiano. I've read everything that he's printed till today, and I can assure you that it almost seems that he is such an important contemporary author, a Nobel laureate, sort of moving into the Indian space. And this is very, very important, and for all the publishers, most of whom, between us, don't tell others, are illiterate. They don't know, for example, Bengal, which sort of boasted of a great tradition, has not been doing very well recently because of the decline in the standard of the concept.
It's a very long footnote.
But I wanted to say that some of us were unanimous in the choice because we could read English, French, and Hindi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Leila, I think you unfortunately have to leave us because you have a plane. So, thank you very, very much, Leila. And please give us applause for Leila. Thank you very much. It was great. And perhaps just before, if you have some questions, I think we can take a few minutes to answer the questions. So, is there any question? Okay, so otherwise I would like to thank two people. First is VC Thomas, because VC Thomas, you have helped us a lot for the Malayalam translation. It was really important to benefit also from your work. And of course, I would like to address a special thanks to Pretty Paul of APJ Surendra Group. Pretty has helped us a lot. She has been a constant source of inspiration, and thanks to her, we can offer to Monica Singh and to Pranav Jury from Rashpal & Sons for the beautiful translation awarded today, a journey to Paris for the Paris Book Fair, and I think we will organize a beautiful event also during the Paris Book Fair about what you've done, Pranav, about what you've translated, Monica. So thank you very much to all of you, and thank you a lot to the jury members of the Prix Romain Rolland. Thank you. And let's go to our team.